I didn't know that the offering was going to pay people. I just knew that we're giving because we followed the word. Hey, give 10%. So, we grew up tithing when we could because we were broke. Broke. Like, we were tithing and then going, should I have given that?
How are we going to eat?
Yeah, how are we going to eat type deal?
Yeah.
And so,
I think...
But we didn't know, half of it was that I didn't know that people got paid in ministry, and the other half was like, why would you insult me on paying me for something, in a servant situation to the Lord?
Okay, so in ministry, I saw, I remember this growing up. I remember the pastors were always dressed really nice.
Yes.
But the pastors at our church didn't come across as nothing came across as inappropriate. I just, in my brain, I was like, oh, they're taken care of. I didn't know the offering bucket was paying them.
Yeah.
And then I knew that we had guest speakers and we would take special offerings for the guest speakers. But I didn't realize that's the only way they got paid, most of them. But that's kind of an assumption to make. I guess as a kid, I never thought through the economic models, and I definitely never thought that I would be a person who would be one of those people you give to because of what they did for God. I did not
know the pay structure of churches. Like, we did not know that this all existed at that time.
Well, because the other thing too is when you're still living under your parents or you're still a kid, there are no bills to think of.
That's right.
It's like we're not thinking of that. So yeah, this is God's things and it's all holy, and somehow God's going to take care of it. And I guess people who need the money are being taken care of. But I guess maybe the presumption that I probably made was that the pastors were all doing something to fund their own ministry as well. Like maybe that was something. Honestly, because of my whole family were all in what people would say in the marketplace. Like my uncle poured cement, my other uncle did painting, and my aunties were all working as administrators or in the bank or whatever. And then we all served at the church. I think somewhere in my brain there was like this idea that I guess everybody does this, But then when I took that job, I mean, do you have any other thoughts about the holiness of not wanting to take money for doing something that you did to God?
I think it's a healthy.
Excuse me.
I think it's a healthy reverence, but it can get out of control as well. But if the money is set aside to pay you, like, I'm okay now with actually receiving that money, and I'm okay with getting paid for doing something that I was paid for. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like in ministry, like if you did give your time to ministering to the Lord and to his people, and you had like and people want to give you money for that, that's okay for you.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel the same way. The big shift for me was when I started vocational ministry and the pastor said, we don't actually want you working anywhere else. Like,
yeah, that never happened to me. I mean,
what is this?
I actually knew this was kind of like a realization moment for me, that I knew that the pastors were getting paid, a little older, is when one of our pastors at this church was just like, my screen door is coming off, so we're taking an offering to fix my screen door. And I was just like, oh, I guess this offering is going to fix a screen door. So I knew that the offering was going that direction, and then I started connecting the dots. I was like, oh, maybe this offering is going somewhere else instead of like into the Holy of Holies, just kind of disappearing into the chariot of fire, going up to the altar of the Lord and spilling on the crystal sea, I don't know, So, my imagination immediately collapsed when I heard that he was taking up an offering for his screen door. I was just like, go fix it, In my mind, I was just like, we're all lay people, we're all blue-collar workers. We're like...
That's it. That's exactly what it was. We're blue-collar.
Yeah, I was just like, just ask my mom to go fix it. My mom could fix it, or, ask somebody to fix it. Don't take up another offering, man. We ain't got money, yo.
Yeah, the idea was, well, why don't you come fix my screen door? You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
Excuse me. So the finances and ministry, that was like what? But let's get to the time when right before we got married.
Yeah.
And I was full-time ministry, and I had been in ministry for a couple of years, like probably 3 or 4 years. And I remember praying. I cried out to the Lord. I said, Lord, because by this time, this is what ministry was for me, guys. I was sitting in meetings, going through building request forms. We would have these gigantic meetings where we were planning for all of the room usage in this gigantic facility. We were planning out revivals. So there were summer revivals and,
springtime revival.
Well, you got to plan for when people are in church and when they're not in church, and so then you've got to do things to attract people to church.
Don't ever schedule revivals on Super Bowl Sunday.
Yeah.
Because they will not happen. No one's coming.
So we were planning through all that kind of stuff, and I mean, me and meetings, that's not why I said yes. I said yes to ministry because, first of all, I felt like I heard the Lord, and second of all, is because I loved worship and fiery worship and being in that atmosphere. But I actually was spending a lot of my time printing out song charts, scheduling musicians. That church at that time had about 150 singers and probably about 30 or 40 musicians. And so it's my job to schedule musicians for all the services. And so like if you looked at my life as schedule. And then there was a small part of my life spent pastoring my peers. That was my funnest season ever. And we were doing life groups and we were having fun in worship meetings. But I was working from about 11 a.m. to about midnight every single day. And I remember crying out to the Lord and saying, Lord, I'm kind of tired of ministry. Like, so this is about 23 years old.
Yeah.
These are the signs of burnout. Like, I'm like, I love you. I just don't get this. Like the super mega ministry. There's a very machine side, administrative side of serving that many people, multiple thousands of people. And I said, Lord, I kind of want out, like, and please send me something fun, please God. I'm like, please God. Then my phone rings and it's this guy, and he started calling me, and we started laughing on the phone a lot. And we fell in love actually on the phone.
Yep.
I was in Colorado and you were in Hawaii. And you were still serving at the church there.
Yes, I was still serving at Word of Life Church. And I was one of the singers on the worship team and loved it. I loved my time there. I had my cell group that I was part of, and my life was absolutely full because I got to hang out with all these amazing people.
And you were writing music, and you were performing music or ministering music, and that church is awesome at performing arts and stuff like that. And so we ended up falling in love, and you made the decision that you were going to move up to me.
Yes.
And
I was going to leave everything that I had, which was a blanket. I was going to leave all of it behind to come and pursue my love.
So you did. You moved up to Colorado. You proposed to me the first day you got there. I said yes. We're engaged. I'm on staff, and you start serving with me.
That's right.
To kind of just help and get in the rhythms of ministry. But while you were serving with me, you also were working a full-time job delivering cabinets in Colorado. Mm-hmm. So we're trying to show you guys this theme of like how does this work? And we don't even actually know how it works. We're just telling you how it worked for us so that you guys can kind of see.
I wish there was like a halfway house for those coming out of the blue collar ministry into
blue collar life.
Blue collar ministry. I like that. So blue collar life into clergy.
Yeah.
I wish there was like a halfway house who goes, hey, you're going to spend most of your time, filling out paperwork. What you think is ministry is probably not what you're going to be doing. You're probably going to be talking to a lot of kids on how to stay away from certain things. And you're probably going to talk to the parents on how to watch their children.
Mm-hmm.
And you're probably going to talk to a lot of people that have better ideas than you
about
do.
ministry.
And if you don't implement them, they will get mad. So that type of thing.
So you, what happened was when we got married, the
Yes.
church decided to. This is crazy.
This is wild.
The church decided to hire him on.
Yes.
It
So
was a
I
huge
sat down.
decision
Yeah.
that a lot of people had, because the bigger the church gets, the more people have to have a say in the kind of staff picks that they choose for these staffs. And so they had decided that they were okay with you coming on staff and being a pastor alongside me.
Mind you, I'm the first ever pastor with visible tattoos.
Yeah.
In a predominantly white congregation.
Yes, and so it was very scary for them.
It was very scary.
Culturally, it was scary. The leadership was like, ugh.
They didn't know what to do with me. So
Yeah, a lot of people don't know what to do with you, which is why I like him. Because I'm like, yay! It's one of my favorite things about you is that you've stayed wild at heart all these years, even when you've been put in very strict boxes. It's like he'll stay in the box, but
Yeah.
he's like,
But I want you to know that those boxes actually gave me more freedom than it did imprison me, because of the discipline that came with it, and because of the new experiences that I got, I had my eyes open to, as far as ministry, as a lifestyle.
yeah. So we started. That's when because when we got married, they put you on payroll.
Right. They put me on payroll, and mind you, Rachel has been working there for how many years?
Probably 3 or 4 years by this time.
3 or 4 years, and I come on,
And I was on payroll.
and she was on payroll, and I come on, and they shift her pay under my name. Can you imagine? At this point, we're just newly married. We just come into we're just trying to figure life out, and now I take all her pay, and now I'm getting paid as the head pastor of the young adult ministry. The frustration and the turmoil that it caused in our marriage was absolutely wild.
Yeah, because now you add marriage to all of this, and you've got headship in the family. Which is probably why the church did it, honestly, because of the headship issue. Whether it's right or wrong, whatever.
Well, it definitely got us in a direction for sure.
But we got pregnant on our honeymoon.
Yep.
So that was like a blessing from the Lord, but it was also tons of change at once. And so they were trying to stabilize our family. That's what the church the staff was doing. And so the main point of all of this is that you were the guy.
I was the guy.
You were the guy now in full-time vocational ministry. So now get this. This was the hard thing. And you still struggle with this.
Picture this.
He has his mind as the servant class.
100%.
Always. I think that goes into, I don't know if that's from your culture. It is from mine, we've said.
Oh, definitely. Definitely our culture is geared towards servanthood. Yeah.
But also the way that other ethnicities look at Samoans in Hawaii. Would you say that plays into it at all? Like, oh, he's a Samoan. He's going to be serving. He'll never be leading?
I wouldn't say he'll never be leading, but I would say like majority of the servant leadership is mostly Samoan.
Samoan, okay. Yeah. I was just, so what ends up happening is now you're coming out of this class, you have no degrees, but you've been serving. See, I think that's what happens is people like straight up mow over this class of people, and they assume that because they don't have degrees or ministry pedigree, or because their dad's not some super saint, or that because they don't have a dad, they're disqualified or whatever. There's all these golden people who are right here that are actually ready to do something. They've been passed over in the anointing ceremony. And it's almost like the Lord has to stop everything to be like, hey, actually, none of these people who you think are qualified for ministry, I haven't chose any of them. We need to stop this thing and go get the person who's serving in the backfield.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what the Lord did for you in that season, is He brought you out of this servant, quote unquote, servant class, and brought you into the leadership. And it was like whiplash.
No, that's exactly what happened. And when I sat at the table, you know, as the lead pastor for the young adult ministry, I didn't know anything about ministry. I didn't know anything about filling out paperwork. I didn't know anything about emails. I didn't know anything about AOL. What's up? AOL, Hotmail. You know, I didn't know anything.
The dress code was a stumbling block.
The dress code was a stumbling block.
Tie,
I would show up with like a sweatsuit. You know, they would say show up with a suit. I was like, I got a FUBU sweatsuit, you know, on, and people would be like, that's a jogging suit. I was just like, I know, I got a suit on, you know.
And it was just, but you went into full-time vocational ministry, and you started to feel what it felt like to work with a multi-tiered leadership team that was responsible to pastor over thousands of people. And your touch point with that was the youth, the young adults, a little bit of the music ministry, but and you did weddings.
I did weddings.
You were the guy who
the thing
weddings.
I feared the most is weddings and funerals. The reason why is if nobody took pictures, I would be okay. If nobody took video, I would be okay. But I mean, I am notorious for messing up people's names. I am notorious for saying something that is not, I wouldn't say appropriate, but it's not for the occasion.
Yeah.
You know, and so I've always been one to shoot from the hip, you know,
and you can't.
Sometimes my hip is out of joint. And the aim's off, you know.
But you had a reputation as like the tattoo pastor.
So I don't know what it was, but in a season, like every biker that was ever getting married, like came to me and said, hey, can you do our marriage counseling? And I was just like, yeah, absolutely. Every ex-drug addict, every, you know,
remarriage.
Every, you know, second marriage, you know, would be coming to me, and I was just like, okay, I guess these are the people that I draw. I'm down, you know, and I would do their weddings. I mean, it was like, you know, it wasn't extravagant. One of them was just at their house, but it was one of the most precious times.
And they were always so grateful.
Oh, they were always so grateful.
You would come to our house, Pastor, thank you, Pastor, for coming.
And in my mind, I'm just like, I would just stay here like for free and just hang out with you guys, you know? But I think you'll get sick of me after a while.
They're like, you can leave now, Pastor.
No, thank you for your time, Pastor. I would really enjoy it if you just left. No, I'm just kidding. You know, but they were just the most precious people, and I would attract those type of people, and they would want me to do their wedding. Actually, one of the guys that passed away wanted me to do his funeral, and I was just like, oh man, funerals and weddings, one of my greatest fears of doing.
But you did a good job. I watched you. Yeah. I never did a funeral or a wedding. I don't think it was at that time really a female role, or maybe they didn't see me that. Maybe they saw me as the singing pastor.
Yeah.
So I did sing. That's what I did. I sang at a lot of funerals.
What I did learn in weddings is always put your suit on 2 weeks before, because I was in the suit. You know, I was going to use the suit that we got married in, and that's the only suit I owned. And so when I put it on like a week before. When I put it on the week before the wedding, I mean, it was like fat guy in a little coat. I was like, babe, what are we gonna do?
And he's at outdoor weddings, and he's like
I'm
literally
just sweating. I mean, sweating.
His notebook is covered in sweat, and it's just like
The Xerox ink is like running off of this thing. I mean, literally, it was one of those things.
But you did so good, and the thing that you just talked about all the things you didn't know, but what you did know, you knew how to love people right where they were at.
I did.
You were the pastor who wasn't stuck in an office. You were out fishing with the guy trying to get over his drinking habit,
Yeah.
telling him he can do it and that the Lord loves him.
Yeah.
You were the guy picking someone up from an airport when they had no family to do that. You were always.
I was always the guy that was
Serving.
serving. I thought that's what you did as a pastor, was that, okay, you're done in the servant, you're done serving in this tier here. When you get up here, your servanthood actually increases.
Expands.
It expands.
You didn't stop setting up tables.
No, I didn't stop
or
setting up
chairs,
tables.
or lights, or sound
or
systems.
bringing food, or I didn't stop all that. I was just like, no. The higher you go, in my mind, I said, the higher you go as far as leadership tier, the higher you go, the more you need to be serving the people.
Yeah.
The more you need to be with the ground level people going, how can I help? How can I get in there? And so that was always my mindset growing up. That was always my mindset. And when we were there at the church that you were working at, I always thought that's exactly what I need to be doing. My servanthood needs to expand even more. But it wasn't what was required to stay on staff. What was required to stay on staff was you needed to be organized with your servanthood. And so that was a great lesson for me to learn at that time. And there's organizational stuff. Because in the big, huge grind, in the big ministry, there's gears that needs to be greased in order for this thing to move and groove.
And for the systems and the teams to all be able to work together.
Absolutely. And so I learned at that time that it's not necessarily how hard you work, but it matters how you use your brain in
the tools.
Yeah, in the tools. But I always thought that my physical labor was the only way I could serve.
And loving people.
Increase my servanthood that way was to increase my labor.
Yeah. So in the next episode, we should talk about how the Lord transitioned us out of pastoral ministry and into missionary ministry, because that was a transition we didn't see coming.
Absolutely.
But I hope this brings someone some help. I hope you can find yourself in our story somehow.
Absolutely.
Especially if you feel called to ministry and you can kind of see the Lord's hands working for you and in you and through you somehow. We just hope that it blesses you. So chime in if you have any questions.
Yes.
In the comments, ask us questions.
Ask us on stuff that you'd like us to expound on. And I hope you have a little picture of the orthodox and the unorthodox way of getting into ministry. Because there's a lot of people out there that are in my shoes. And there's a lot of people out there that are in your shoes. And I hope you guys get to glean a lot from this. So thank you so much for tuning in to Lava Official. We'll see you on the next one.